Hello everyone, this is the Ravens Librarian with my second part of my playthrough of Dawn of War. In the last part, the Space Marines arrived on the planet in order to provide assistance against an Ork invasion, and in this part, we're going to be heading into the nearby swamps in order to try to break the Orks' momentum to buy time for the counterattacks.
War Journal of Captain Gabriel Angelos. The situation on the planet Tartarus is grim. While the Blood Ravens crushed the main Ork offensive at the spaceport, the bulk of their force is not engaged. They gather in the wilderness, awaiting a critical mass of bodies that will overwhelm the Imperial forces in a green wave of death and destruction. The Blood Ravens will not allow this to occur. Orbital monitoring has detected an area in the southern forests where the Orks appear to be massing. Orks only respect strength, so they will look to the largest of their groups to lead them. We will insert a small, covert strike force to eliminate these Ork leaders and destroy any encampments where the Orks might mass. This should cut to the heart of the Orks' fighting spirit and delay their inevitable counterattack. We must tread lightly, lest we disturb this slumbering beast.
So, like he said, this is going to start off as an infiltration mission using the newly introduced scouts into the gameplay mechanic. This is more or less the area that we're supposedly in. This is the Ork insignia. This is them gathering. This is the Blood Raven insignia. This is where we'll be deployed. And these are more or less Imperial Guard regiments or squads overseeing, security for the rest of the city population.
You have your orders. Now go. And may the Emperor protect you.
I do not care for all this sneaking about.
I know, old friend. You always have preferred the direct approach.
We have the Imperial Guard. Why not send them into battle instead of treating them like glorified shepherds? If we meet the Orks in force, they cannot possibly stand before us.
We have fought the Ork 100 times before. They thrive on war. A direct assault on them would likely improve their morale, and simply attract more of them. The casualties would be enormous.
What are the Imperial Guard for if not to die for their Emperor? At the very least, we should retain a regiment to remain at our call. We have little support this far out. We would not want to be remembered for our carelessness.
We, old friend? Or me?
We are brothers, Gabriel. You know better than to ask that question. I know what this is about. There was nothing you could have done to save Cyrene.
Do not mention that place again, Isidore. Cyrene was my homeworld. My responsibility. Scout Team 3, do you copy?
Yes, my lord.
The local Imperial waterworks has fallen into Ork hands. If we are to reclaim this area, we must first retake this position. Scouts have infiltrated ahead of you and will assist you in your reconnaissance. If things prove to be more than you can handle, reinforcements will be mobilized to assist.
Getting into position.
So, like he said, we'll be infiltrating the first area in order to take out the Ork leader to make the attack a lot easier for us. Infiltration button.
Excellent.
Scouts
Your Scout
advance.
Marine squad is now invisible to
Commencing
all enemies
infiltration.
except for commanders. Keep in mind, though, if you are attacked, your invisibility
I
will be
sense
broken,
danger.
and
We will
some
root it
time will
out.
pass before you can utilize it
Gathering
again.
intelligence. This area is crawling with Orks. Getting into position. We should infiltrate to sneak past them. Search commencing. Do not get too close. Yes, my lord. Or we may be spotted.
Basically, don't bump into them.
Commencing
Now, yeah, I'd
infiltration.
like to help them, but I pretty much lose that fight.
Move ahead and mark any enemy positions. Scouts here. Scouts awaiting orders.
The wretched Xenos are guarding
We'll
a
take them
strategic
down
point.
from here.
Scout Team 2 is upgraded with sniper rifles. They will
Scouts
make
here.
short work of these Orks.
I what it's doing. Like, they're the snipers. Takes a while to shoot, but they deal a lot of damage. Basically, scouts are basically the, well, obviously, they're the infiltrators. Now, at the beginning of that mission, at the end, when he was telling them, if you have some trouble, you know, we'll be ready to help. That's basically saying that if you mess up the infiltration part of the mission, he'll just deploy his forces immediately to try to clean up the mess. You're meant to take out one Orc leader.
An Orc patrol. Wait for them to pass before we attempt to sneak by.
So the problem is this guy can actually detect us. So if we get too close, he'll register and then we get stuck in a fight. So the problem is, unlike the regular Space Marines, these guys are a pretty hard fight for the scouts to win at this point. Because unlike the Space Marines in universe, the scouts don't have all of the augmentations and super weapons that the Space Marines get. The reason is because, well, I don't know if I fully understand the reason, but basically, scouts are recruits that are almost done with their training. So the Space Marines, they need to recruit people to turn into Space Marines. And so they get a bunch of people, but then they gotta find out whether or not these people are actually, you know, worthy and competent to become Space Marines. Because they don't want to recruit anybody. So instead, what happens is they recruit a bunch of people, train them, assuming they survive long enough, they become scouts. So then the scouts, they do the job of being a scout. You know, they do everything involved. They infiltrate, you know, operate assassination missions if necessary, like the one we're doing now. And if they survive long enough and succeed, I don't know what the exact process is.
Target. A large Orc knob who looks like he's in charge of this bunch. If we kill him, we'll severely weaken the Orc morale.
Oh, right, not again. This stuff, no. If I get into this fight, we're gonna waste a lot of time. Might even lose.
Scouts charge.
Take this guy out. Come on. Should be pretty quickly to beat him. Yep. And done.
The Orc knob is dead. We will take it from here.
Damn it! I forget what they got. Get behind them. Yeah, like I said, Space Marines, they have a lot more options. They can actually do this fight really easily.
Yes, my lord. Taking heavy fire.
Today, the enemy shall know fear. While the enemies of the Emperor still draw breath, there can be no peace.
Weapons at ready. It is time.
So once the scouts, like I said, I don't know the details. I don't know how long it takes. But after a certain amount of time or a certain amount of missions, you know, the scouts prove that they are in fact competent enough to become Space Marines, and they get augmented into Space Marines. At which point, you know, they serve at whatever role the chapter deems, you know, they're gonna be fit for, or whatever the chapter already has assigned. Some chapters have like pretty organized patterns, so you do this job, then you'll move on to this job, so on and so forth. Now, as to why they get their recruits to do the job of being a scout, there might be different answers, but the one that I recall is that basically they need to be sure that the people that are gonna do the job are gonna do it well. But they understand that they can't make novices do the job of regular grunt force, because practically speaking, there's no way that the regular human is gonna be able to do the job of holding the line that a Space Marine does.
Today, the enemy
but what they can do is show skill and competence in infiltration, because, you know, it is a hard job, but it isn't one that requires you to, you know, be able to survive, you know, being shot at. Because if you're doing your job as a scout, you are not gonna be getting into combat. It's sort of like kind of makes sense because the idea is that
Scouts in position.
if you're skilled enough to do the job by not getting into fights, then you are worthy of being strong, of getting the augmentations, so that you then can get into the fight. So obviously, most of their fighting force can actually do infiltrations as well. I mean, most of them went through the process as well. So even the basic Space
He who
Marine
stands with me shall be my
is a
Position
brother.
competent
secure.
scout and a competent
Orders
infiltrator.
received.
Like I said, I don't know for 100% certain if that's the reason, but that's the reason that I'm aware of.
Understood.
A couple of moves that are still here, but
Orders received,
you know what? Not.
brother.
I don't want to risk them coming back around
By my
and
command, attack!
taking all my strategic points and wasting time, losing resources. This will slow us down a bit, but it will save us a bit of annoyance later on. Whenever I've done this mission before, it always gets...
Initiating attack protocol 23.
Basically, I take this area, and then if you do this, usually you don't have to worry about this side of the map anymore. You just gotta worry about, everything else that's left. That's why I'm doing this.
Onward to glory!
So we talked about the scouts. There's more, but I don't actually know all that much about the scout role in the actual 40k setting. But let's talk about the orcs, since we're going to be dealing with them a lot in the next few missions.
My aim shall not falter.
Orcs are basically warmongering invaders. They trope-wise. I don't know how to better explain that. Like, their job is to role in the story is to invade planets, invade whatever the main character human perspective and other races are usually hoping to protect. And the orcs show up and decide to make a big old mess of the place. Why? Because for them it's just really, really fun. Orcs are all about war and combat. That's why they exist. That's what they live for. For them, getting into a fight is one of the best things you can do with your time. If they're not fighting us and other races, they're fighting each other. So, as the mission said, our goal, well, at least for the scouts, the goal was to take out the leader. Now, this is because orcs tend to follow
Today the enemy shall know.
might makes right, big guy, bosses everyone around mentality. What
For the Emperor.
that translates to is that their leaders tend to be the biggest guys around. It also
For
means
the
that
Emperor.
they tend to rely on those guys to actually, do stuff.
Attack!
It's not that they can't do stuff on their own, it's just that they follow the leader and they follow whoever's, ordering them around.
Infiltration.
If that guy disappears, then one of two things happen. The orcs either lose confidence because if you could take out their biggest guy, then, well, what chance do they have? Or it means that they're gonna now spend the rest of the time prioritizing who's gonna get to be the new big guy. That can change based on the specific orc groups and obviously how long they've been operating and how many of them there actually are, because if there's enough big guys they tend to be able to keep order. But there's also a high risk that all of the orc commanders
The water orcs are under our control. Glorious now we must start building a base before we hunt down the rest of the orcs. Let us capture these strategic points and establish a base of operations.
Instructions. I will do as you ask.
Area secured.
Sorry if you heard that, my dog was barking. But if you take out the orc leader, then the orcs lose a lot of confidence, because their mentality is that the strongest guy is the best, and if you could take out their best, then it's not looking good for them.
My faith is my shield.
It also can just lead to a lot of chaos and disorder in their faction, because without the biggest guy who was in charge,
Attacking as
making
ordered.
sure that they do what they're supposed to do, these guys are just as inclined to start attacking each other, just to, you know, get to a, alright, who's actually in charge? We'll see this in a future mission where we actually see how the orcs deal with each other, you know, when the other factions aren't looking. We don't learn too much about their backstory. There's a whole, you know, hit lore behind what the orcs are and why they are the way they are. But at least suffice to say for now that their strategy MO is basically invade a planet and just wreck the absolute mess out of everyone there.
Yes, Lord?
And the best way to stop them is more or less what we're doing now. Go find
Yes,
whoever's in
most
charge in
beneficent
the area
one.
that you're trying to, you know, like, retake,
I will
kill
do
them
as
quickly,
you ask.
and take advantage of the chaos from the orcs losing morale or, you know, getting into infighting, and then take them out as fast and as hard as possible. Problem is that orcs are very quick to recover from a lot of losses. Now, during the cutscene at the start,
Accomplished.
with the conversation between the captain and his librarian, one of their ranks. Now, the librarian, he's got his own character journey, which is why he's purposely made to be more aggressive and more kind of impatient in a way. But really, the reason he suggests what he suggests in this mission is because they needed somebody to voice the alternative option, just to exposition why they're not doing that. So the idea is that, oh, what is it? Are the Space Marines not just fighting head on because they would lose? No, that's Space Marines are very confident that they can defeat the Orcs, but so they need to have someone voice the obvious part, which is
Xeno sighted.
With all due haste.
no, I'm not sure if he said. Xenos is this universe's word for alien. Like, they do have the word alien, but you know they have the word Xeno, and you know they interchange between it.
Praise the Emperor.
Like I said, some stuff in this game might be in order to like make it easier for non-fans of 40k to understand what's going on. Other stuff might just be, you know, because 40k is a pretty big place, so sometimes characters say the words we do know, and sometimes they use their made-up words. All words are made up.
Taking heavy fire.
Oh, Gabriel.
Beware the Emperor, the heretic. We are united in his service.
No problem with having. Sometimes he gets a bit too ahead of himself.
Follow my lead. For the glory of the Emperor. Follow my lead. Follow my lead.
He'll get himself
Agreed.
surrounded by way too many people with guns, and you know, he'll be fine. You should heal from that. This, and we can start building up forces.
At your command. I sense danger. We will root it out.
Marine squad deploys your order. Initiating attack protocol 23.
We will need more than heavy bolters to defeat these orcs. We must upgrade the stronghold to gain access to the tools we will need to destroy this plague.
Right?
For the glory of the Imperium.
Are you gonna let me actually do that?
Taking Marine squad deployed. What is your order?
No, not yet. There.
Heresy.
I need that in order to unlock this, which is what we need for the mech.
Understood.
Something you'll notice about orcs and their buildings that they love putting guns on almost everything. It's a bit of their game mechanic in this game. Almost everything they build has something that will shoot at you.
Awaiting orders. Orders received, brother.
You also notice, at least with some of their objects, they rely a lot more on wood. I'm not sure what their reactors are made of.
At your command. We stand ready.
But yeah, like their building strategy, you'll see it at some point. If not here, you'll see it in the Winter Assault campaign, when you can actually play as the Orks. They'll just fly a plane, that'll drop a huge chunk of junk on the floor, which they will then use to make whatever they need.
Engaging the enemy. Under fire.
The all-telling eyes of the skull probes are with us. Find them on our listening posts. The monastery is complete. Sergeants will inspire your Space Marine squads to greater feats of heroism, and rocket launchers will make short work of Ork buildings.
You gotta be careful when getting these guys, because sometimes the AI will be lucky or smart enough to target them, and you'll lose.
Strategic point identified.
You know, you'll lose them quicker than you'll lose like an entire squad. Unfortunately, when you ask a squad to take over one of these points, they get a little weird when it comes to like responding to what's going on. There we go.
We must upgrade an existing listening post with the fortified position add-on. This upgrade will increase the requisition income and add better defenses to the listening post.
That is this thing. This also gives it a gun, so it can actually defend itself. It's not super strong. Eventually you'll run into things that can pretty quickly destroy this. So you'll have to, if you want to really protect a spot like this, you'll need to get the second upgrade that comes later. Now that one really can't tank hits. This is the skull probe. It's their way of scouting without using scouts, and also it has the ability to detect people who are infiltrated. Not a big threat at this point because the Orks don't really.
The listening post is now earning more requisition, has better armor against enemy attacks, and has a gun emplacement to strike back.
Attacking as ordered.
Like these Orks don't really rely a lot on stealth. They can, their builders can actually stealth.
Beware, brothers. That mechanical monster is a killer can. It is devastating in close quarters fighting, and its armored hide will shrug off small arms fire. We must equip ourselves with missile launchers if we are to destroy the abomination.
That's the green color.
Commencing attack.
So you'll see it now. The more times this thing gets hit by missiles, the faster its health goes down. If you try fighting this thing just with bullets, even with the Gatling gun, the damage it takes is really low.
Attacking as ordered.
So you have to be real careful about what weapons you have, because if you run into something that's immune to most of your weapon choice, you're gonna have a very hard time making up for the difference.
Ever vigilant. Weapons at ready. It is time.
Scouts awaiting orders. Getting into position. Scouts advance.
Awaiting orders.
Let's
Cleanse, purge, kill.
on to the next one.
Initiating attack protocol.
Now this bot's deliberately made this way so that you're gonna be stuck in a funnel. So in this side, which is where the main Ork camp is, they have a bunch of towers with guys with guns. And so if you take too long clearing this area, or if you don't bring enough missiles and they blow these up, you'll basically start losing a few troops just because they'll just hit them enough with bullets and they'll eventually go down. Like, those towers don't do a lot of damage on their own, but Orks love to build them, so they have so many, machine guns firing at you. Sooner or later, someone's gonna die from them.
Orders received, brother.
Especially in this RTS, that's one of the Orcs' main strategies. They are
Weapons at ready. It is time.
one of the most numerous factions in terms of how many units they can pull out into a single fight. So
stay vigilant, brothers. Commencing attack.
Their biggest strategy in combat tends to be overwhelming.
Weapons at ready. It is time.
Whenever you're fighting them, you always have to deal with countless waves of them just showing up. Basically what the guy in the beginning, he said in the first mission. Orcs only retreat to regroup. There's not a lot of retreating in this game because, they mostly die. Here it is. This is pretty definitely scripted. So you get to this point and suddenly it's like, alright, throw as many units as we can. Just drown them in green. Oh, damn. Oh, he got really hit hard. Yeah, I might have lost this guy. No, he made it. Alright, he made it. Did I lose the one guy with machine gun? I think I know what I'm doing wrong.
Ever vigilant. We stand ready.
Yeah, these guys didn't have any. I forgot to give these guys more guns.
We stand ready. At your command. Taking heavy fire.
Beware the alien. The mutant.
The area is secure.
Cleared up that.
Awaiting orders. Initiating attack protocol 23. Charge!
We'll later get our version of this, but basically this is just their mech. They can get pretty big and pretty outrageous in the main 40k stuff, but here it's basically a giant tin can with chainsaw and claw to like rip out organs. Orcs are pretty brutal in how they fight.
Received. Moving out. For the glory of the Imperium.
Okay.
At your command. The enemy is attacking.
I'll put these guys here.
Purge. Kill.
I'm not gonna take out one of the camps, but they might. The guys from this one might keep sending people to retake this. So. Whenever you choose one of the weapons upgrades, like I said, you have to take into consideration what type of enemy you're gonna be running into. Because if you have a lot of anti-vehicle and anti-building weapons, but your next wave is just gonna be a whole bunch of these guys, then the missile launchers aren't really gonna do a lot. The only exception here is that they'll be able to take out these things, but these things in particular aren't that hard to take out, even when you don't have them. Like, they do make it easier, but like I said, if you're focusing on actually taking out the waves of enemies they're throwing at you, the missile launcher guys aren't really contributing a whole lot. And then the same thing, obviously, gets flipped around if you're fighting. I better make sure they actually... When you're just focused on taking out the buildings, the guys with Gatling guns aren't really doing a lot. Whereas the missile launchers do most of the work and get it done quickly. See here, the Gatling gun is doing pretty decent damage, but the missile launchers do way more. And when it comes to buildings like these, yeah, you really want to get the missile launcher to just get it over with. That's why I usually, this is usually my combination. These two might have their advantages, but I'm not so good at the game that I can, I have it memorized. And just from experience, I just prefer to have the combination between the Gatling gun and the heavy weapon. In most cases, it tends to get the job done. Now, in gameplay, like I said, I don't see much advantage to this weapon, but in lore, this is one of the key weapons to taking out the Orcs. Because the Orcs have this thing where they basically grow on, like, fungus in the planets that they attack. So the problem with an Orc is that once they show up on a planet, getting rid of them is really hard. Because they will, as long as there's enough of their material to grow, they'll grow back. So, in order to get rid of them for good, you would basically have to go to where they set up camp and just hope that you can just burn it all to the ground.
My faith is my shield.
I often forget
my aim shall not
get
falter.
This one. So, right, the Orc is probably getting too much into the lore, so I don't know if any of you really care about that stuff, or probably don't already know it, but Orcs are, as a species, they're more or less like a fungus. So, they show up on a planet, and just with them being there, they're slowly, eventually going to produce spores that will latch on to whatever it can, and from that, they'll just make more of them.
We are the Emperor's chosen.
Which leads to the problem of Orcs, that no matter how many of them you get rid of,
for the glory of the Imperium,
the moment I leave is the moment you guys show up. Such a rookie mistake. This is the main reason you want to have those strategic points covered by something, anything.
charge! Taking heavy fire!
Since this thing will at the very least hold for a little bit.
Fear denies faith. Objective acquired. Ever vigilant. Orders received.
I might try that stunt again.
Walk softly and carry a big gun.
Maintain attack formation.
On alert, brothers. The enemy must be nearby. While the enemies of the Emperor still draw breath, there can be no peace.
Objective achieved. Yes, my lord. At your command. Taking damage. Orders received, brother.
I already mentioned this a bunch, but in hindsight, it's really funny how I didn't notice just the way that the captain talks in the automatic, voice comments.
Onward to glory!
As long as the enemies of the Emperor live, there can be no peace. Like,
Fear
just the
not.
casual way he says stuff like that.
Orders received.
And there's pieces of that all throughout the dialogue between the AIs.
None shall stop us.
Whenever you're, like, just triggering a response from them. Sometimes it's just really generic command, follow-ups, like, going to where you told me, doing this. But other times they'll just say, pretty standard, this is our mindset type stuff.
Commencing attack.
This might be the time
Ever vigilant. Orders received.
to get everyone.
What's your order? Cleanse, purge, tail.
Come on now.
Engaging the enemy.
Walk softly and carry a big gun. Space Marines, advance!
I believe that's a deliberate reference to an old line from, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt, former president. Oh yeah, and that's something I had no idea in this setting, where it doesn't have any relevance in this story because we never go there, but 40k does have an Earth. Like Earth exists in 40k. It's very different from our Earth, but
Space Marines, advance!
it is in fact there. It's actually the capital of the Imperium. Holy Terra, as they call it.
Praise the Emperor.
That's this.
My aim shall not falter.
This is where their mechs come from. This is their HQ. Okay, so because these guys are all getting stuck in the moving animation, these guys are getting stuck dealing with most of the enemies, so these guys are probably not gonna make it.
Carry a big gun.
Faith is our shield.
God, they're not gonna.
Orders received.
Nope. Head back, head back.
Kill. Awaiting orders. Awaiting orders. Objective bar. Ever vigilant. Taking head fire.
Against the AIs, you usually just have to take out their HQ in order to win. Now in the story missions, they usually have you take out any building that can produce more of them. Which makes sense, because if they, kind of makes sense. If they can get any units into combat, there's a chance that they can, recover from that. And in the case of the story, it's just because, your job is to actually
Position on the objective.
wipe them out. Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you just took out the buildings
Emperor protects.
and then just left them alive, or you killed all of the orcs, but then left all of their buildings intact.
Attacking as ordered.
It can be a bit inconsistent with what it defines as the camp, but whatever, job done.
I must speak with the captain.
He is giving the Emperor his praise. Leave him this moment.
Yes, brother librarian. We completed our sweep of the area and can find no more orcs.
Indeed. Tell your squad to move ahead and clear the company's path.
Yes, Brother Librarian.
I will suffer no trespass.
I'm pretty sure what you're hearing in the background is the sound effects from the combat section. Sometimes it gets stuck in animation, and the sound bite just keeps playing on loop until the mission ends. So that was the second mission. Pretty simple stuff. Still, like, even I know I'll keep saying it. I know I'm playing it on normal, but this is still fairly tame stuff. Like the orcs aren't, they don't have any of their big weapons yet. Like the closest thing was the mech, and that's not their best weapon. And for the most part, they don't react all that hard to what you're doing. Like they're just, the only trick they have is just slowly sending troops your way, which you should be able to react to pretty well by this point. Later on, it's going to get a lot harder, even on normal, to like keep them in check. Especially the next mission can get a bit annoying in the early stages, just clearing them out. But we'll leave that for the next part. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you'll be coming back in the future to see the rest of this campaign. Take care, everyone.